Apologies. Apologies, I'm a little late. And apologies, my connectivity isn't very good. So I think I'm gonna go ahead really quick. Just, you got to see my face, but I'm gonna go ahead probably and turn off my camera. If I can figure out how to do that. I'm on my husband's Mac, and I am not good with Macs at all. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that. I don't think I can, unfortunately. I have no idea how to do that.
Can you see your Zoom toolbar at the bottom there?
Let me see here.
Little camera.
Stop video. I can do it that way. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
This looks a lot different than what I'm used to. Okay, well, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay. I was hoping to use my office, but my government computer wouldn't let me do Zoom. And I know my first slide here, hopefully you all can see my little slideshow. It says I work at Lava Beds National Monument. I have actually moved on. So I'm coming at you for today from Jewel Cave National Monument in Custer, South Dakota. And so just about 2 weeks ago, my husband, 1-year-old, and I moved the 1,200 miles to here. It was a really great promotion for me. So I'm enjoying it so far, but I'm always super happy to get to talk a bit about lava beds, as well as tracks, scat, and a few birds. A lot of y'all are probably coming at us from the San Francisco Bay Area. So one day we're chatting about just a couple birds that we have in common between those two spots. So again, I was formerly an interpretive park ranger at Lava Beds. I'm now the chief of interpretation, so I get to manage all those interpretive park rangers at Jewel Cave National Monument in Custer, South Dakota, which is right on the border of South Dakota and Wyoming. But since y'all are a little closer to Lava Beds, if I can figure out how to move the slides here. Nope, I can't. I have no idea how to move the slides either. Oh, that'll work. Okay, so where in the world is Lava Beds? So it's way up in Tulelake, California. Most of the park is in Siskiyou County, which on the right side of the slide, I've kind of highlighted in orange. A little bit of it, though, is in Modoc County, the county to the right of the highlighted one. And then that map on the left is showing you shape is the park map and boundary with some surrounding areas. So when I worked at Lava Beds, I actually lived in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and commuted the 45 miles to the park. A really, really fabulous park. It's just a little desolate, but it's very nice. And what is it known for? It's known for lava tubes. It's known for being the homeland of the Modoc people and the Modoc War, and a lot more. So we'll touch on those things just a little bit before we get into more about tracks and scat. So Lava Beds has over 900 lava tubes. This is the most caves of any national park unit, because Lava Beds is part of the National Park Service, which helps take care of over 400 national parks all around the country, including the Flight 93 National Memorial, which of course is the really important site today, as we're in the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which is crazy. So lots of really interesting cultural, historic sites all around the country. So one thing that's significant about Lava Beds is all these lava tubes that you can explore. I did not explore all 900 or even close to that, but the ones I did explore, I had a really great time. It's also the homeland, again, of the Modoc people. They lived there for over 10,000 years. In the 1840s, more people of European heritage began to settle in the area. And so then the Modoc people were having to interact with more people than they were used to. They're used to interacting with their neighboring tribes and themselves, all the way from Merrill, Oregon to Mount Shasta. But this was a little new for them to have to share their land with all these people. And so they were made to sign a treaty and be put on a reservation. And some of them were not satisfied with the conditions on that reservation, including who we have pictured here on the left, Kiantapus. His nickname was Captain Jack. That's what a lot of folks know him as. So he and his band of Modocs left the reservation, and a war ensued to push them, 2 other bands of Modocs, back on the reservation, even though there were only about 50 Modoc warriors and over 700 United States soldiers. They were able to hold off the army for over 6 months. So that's a really interesting story they get to tell at Lava Beds. The Modoc people did ultimately lose the Modoc War, and those involved in the war were sent to Oklahoma. So today you have the Modoc Nation in Oklahoma, and then the Modoc people who were not involved in the war that remains in the reservation that was in Oregon, They're recognized, many of them, with the Klamath tribe. And for a little bit more about the park, as well as the different tribal nations, there's some websites there that you can check out, because I know the main thing that y'all are after that you want to learn about is a little more about tracks and scat. And some of y'all are probably a lot better at identifying tracks than I am, but there's a few tips if you're a novice like I was before I made this presentation that can help you learn a little more. So one is to measure. There's always exceptions. There's going to be out there, you know, that exceptionally large bobcat, that really, really big coyote that the paw print might seem more wolf-like. But for the most part, a lot of animals fit within a certain measurement. So if you see something that's of this size, oh, well, if it's this size, most likely, you know, that's going to cancel out something else. So measuring can be really, really helpful. And then another thing is a gait. But wait, what's a gait? You all might know. A gait is a pattern of movement. So for us, our gaits are like walking, running. We do a lot of different things. We can army crawl, we can swim. There's all sorts of different ways that we can move. But for animals, yeah, running, let's see here, like stotting, hopping. So it's a pattern of movement. So it might help to cancel out, again, just kind of that process of elimination. It helps with that. You see an animal that's moving a little bit differently, and the pattern that they leave behind reflecting that, that'll help you cancel out animals maybe that it's not and animals that it is. So claws or no claws, hoof or paw. Claws or no claws is a really fun one. That's one if you're first kind of learning about tracks, someone's gonna tell you if the claws are out, that's really quickly letting you know that's not a cat, not a feline. Because cats, as they walk, they can retract their claws back into their paws. And so typically if it's a cat, it's not gonna have any claws showing as it's walking around. Hoof or paw, another thing I'll be out a lot that lets you know if it's one of those undulates, if it's a hoofed animal versus a pawed animal, that of course can eliminate a lot of things as well. The surface matters, where you are, what the surface is like there, what the weather has been. Lots of things like that matter as well. Sandy places, beaches. If it's a dirt trail and it's just rained, that can be a really super place to go and look at the paws left behind, the tracks, excuse me. And definitely checking your surroundings and being a nature detective. Whenever you're on a hike, on that trail, maybe you're by some water, you notice that there's some tracks that look kind of interesting, but it maybe is hard to tell. Maybe it hasn't rained in a while and that trail's a little dry, but you're by water. Maybe you look at a tree and you notice that some of the bark is missing. Maybe you notice there's like a little home made of sticks in the water. So that could be a sign that there's some beavers. And so little things like that. If you're walking along, you see some tracks, and then maybe you see where the grass has been pressed down and you kind of measure that a little bit. That could be a sign that that was a deer, just kind of bedded there for a little bit, or another animal resting, depending on what the tracks they left behind look like. And then what is scat? We're gonna be talking about tracks and scat. So then what is scat and what can that tell us? So let's talk about scat. It does have a fun little song. And a lot of y'all maybe heard of it. It starts with an S and ends with a T. Comes out of you and it comes out of me. Some call it this, some call it that. Let's be scientific and call it scat. And so scat, you can tell from our lovely photos here, is just a really fancy name for animal poop, typically referring to behind a wild animal. But you see as you're out walking your dog and you're like, oh, I need to go pick up my dog's scat. Just sound a little extra fancy today. But it can really help us as well. I mean, if you have the tracks and you have the scat and you kind of know a few presentation. Oh, got it.
Interrupt there.
That's all right. We had a really wonderful GIS specialist named Nathan. Now he's at Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. But he was a great photographer, and this bobcat walked like right up to the windows of the office, and it's just like very, very pretty. So he got some really wonderful photos. I actually have kind of scattered throughout this PowerPoint. And yeah, I think we already chatted about this one a little bit, but just in case I wasn't coming in very clear, this is another one that, I mean, if you have both,
the tracks and the scat, it's like, bam, well, that's definitely what this is. Really pretty easy to tell, hoofed animal, fairly common mammal. Have to be careful not to hit them with your cars, leave behind a pellet-like scat, just eat vegetation, don't eat any sort of furry creatures. And that would be our deer. And so at lava beds, we had mule deer. On the coast, you have more of a subspecies of mule deer called black-tailed deer. And then kind of between the coast and those inland areas, like the Sierras, the Cascades, they can interbreed and kind of make like like this mule black-tailed deer sort of thing. But yeah, and again, a black-tailed deer is just a subspecies of mule deer. They really aren't terribly different. They're very, very similar. And just depending on what time of year you visit lava beds or even in your own area, the deer will be, of course, exhibiting some different behavior. And so this is the time of year, I feel like, where we see a lot of male deer, a lot of the bucks, all kind of congregated together. I think last year I saw a group of like 7, and they were all together in this line. And they do that before mating season to kind of establish a bit of a hierarchy. And whenever it's mating season, they kind of know like who's already a little bit of the alpha male, and they can kind of fight each other a little more as they're getting aggressive during that mating season time. And then in November, December, January, after mating season's over, those antlers, they're going to fall off. That's a lot of energy for them to carry those throughout the winter and everything. But they have those in the fall months for mating season. And typically they grow back every year, and they normally get a little bigger every year. It doesn't necessarily mean that, that they're older if they have more antlers or anything, but it could just be like a really, a deer with like lots of nutrients or something. But typically every year they're getting a little bit bigger. And then this is a fun one. I love that we have the handprints next to the paw prints with no claws. And the handprints letting us know it's pretty big. And we also have some pretty big poop. And this is like kind of just like a toy, some toy scat here that you can buy that's like kind of plasticky and fun. It's hard to find an actual scat picture of this animal for some reason. But this would be our mountain lion. And this photo was taken by a really nice guy, Mike Hallstrom, who visited lava beds in the area around it very frequently. And he would send us pictures to our social media accounts. And so this one's a little north of the park. I think he had to zoom in quite a bit because it almost looks like a painting or something, but he was able to get that mama mountain lion and her cub. I worked at lava beds for about 5 years. I worked for the National Park Service for over 10 years, and I've never seen a mountain lion. I'm so bummed. I don't want to see one, but I'm just not that lucky. But Mike saw one for us. They can be kind of a scary animal sometimes for folks to see, but they really rarely attack humans or anything. There have been cases of that, but most of them, they're going to be just as scared of you or as you are of them. But if you do see one as you're hiking and they seem to be, kind of close and nearing towards you, you're supposed to make yourself big, stand your ground, grab some sticks, or if you have hiking poles or something to make yourself look really, really big. You're not supposed to run. That'll make them consider you prey. All these things are easier said than done. And coming at me from someone who's never seen a mountain lion, I would like to think I'm going to do this whole list of things that I'm rattling off, but I can't confidently say that I would. I think it'd be a little scary to actually encounter one. And a lot of times you might even see like things they've left behind other than tracks and scat. You might see their kill left behind. They can eat some pretty big mammals. They're eating those deer, pronghorn. We have those at lava beds as well as where I'm at now. I got to see some as we were driving here. It was really fun. And they may just leave those large animals in kind of their kill site for quite a while because it's going to take a while for them to munch on them. And so you might be hiking and stumble across just like a dead deer or pronghorn if it looks like it's been like aggressively killed by an animal that could have been from a mountain lion. And then where that animal has been left is where that mountain lion is going to return to. So kind of make sure you're like, well, that's nice, and just keep on moving. Because even though, again, they're probably more scared of you than you are of them, you still want to make sure you're giving them their space. Let's see here. Oh, this is a fun one. We talked a little bit about gaits and the way that animals move. This animal can move in some pretty crazy ways. And it is also more of an animal that just eats vegetables. And so has kind of pellet-like scat that we see here on the right. And then again, another snowy photo. when I was researching for this presentation and trying to find park photos, a lot of the park photos from lava beds that have any sort of tracks are whenever it's a snowy day or post-snowy day, because lava beds really doesn't get a lot of rain. They only get about 15 inches a year. And most of the precipitation, I should say, it is from snow. It's not from rain. It's the majority of precipitation, again, from snowfall. And other than that, lava beds is typically pretty dry and kind of dusty. And so it is hard to see those tracks except on a snowy day like this. And so someone got a really fun photo of some really crazy tracks left behind the black-tailed jackrabbit. And so yeah, they have a really, really fun gait. Oftentimes you'll just see like their back paws like sitting flat and then their front paws as they're like jumping. So very rarely probably would you see a jackrabbit's full paws like this one. You would almost have that left behind because it's just kind of sitting there giving itself a little scratch. But typically if they're moving, you'll see like kind of just this craziness like we saw in the prior photo, with just all over the place, and just kind of seeing maybe some slightly bigger tracks in the back and then those little dots in the front. But lots of those, we have some sort of little cotton-tailed rabbit where I'm at now here in South Dakota. I haven't learned much about it yet, but I see them constantly. I love them. They're super cute. And then this rabbit can be eaten by many of the animals that we feature today, bobcats, mountain lions, coyotes. So yeah, lots of the little guys could have a hard life. But just really quick to end with hopefully still being able to hear me and everything, and just a little bit with talking about a little bit more about the park. We were surrounded by a really large lake, but today, as you can see in the photo, it's been drained to a fraction of its size to be used for irrigation and used for farmland, the beds that are left behind. And then let's see here. So Tulelake today, 1872, much larger during that Modoc War I talked about earlier. That was from November of 1872 to June of 1873. And so where some of those sites were, this map is actually really well showing that. All those little bulleted areas like Captain Jack's Stronghold, Hospital Rock, Canby Cross, Thomas Wright Battlefield, Gillam's Camp. Those were sites that are significant during the Modoc War that the park still protects today. And it has since 1925 when it got protected as a national monument. But then north of us, where all that water is and where some of it's been drained, it's a really fun wildlife refuge called Tulelake National Wildlife Refuge. And next to is also the Lower Klamath National Wildlife Refuge. And I have kind of a map here with a little caption. And it says, in 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt established Lower Klamath as the nation's first refuge set aside for waterfowl. And it mentions that the largest wintering concentration of bald eagles in the lower 48 states, they had lower 48, I'm sure that Alaska maybe has some more, is observed here. So if any of y'all have ever gotten the chance to visit from like January to March, you've probably seen some pretty significant bald eagle populations and gold eagle as well. It was super fun to see those. I'm going to miss that. I'm sure I'll still see some here in South Dakota, but not quite like I used to there. And so in the winter, some days that refuge might just look like this, that whole lake just frozen over. Other days it might look like this. All sorts of birds just have risen from the lake, flying all over the place. We have our little juvenile bald eagle over here. We got some northern shovelers. Those eagles are super, super happy because they have all these ducks that they can eat. So that's one reason they migrate here. It's a really great water, but also, yeah, just some really, really good eating for them also. And they're a really nice, majestic bald eagle photo from our Nathan. And I love the pelican. So a lot of places, I feel like in other areas of California, you see the brown pelican in the refuge, and you have them in the Bay Area too. You see the American white pelican. And I'd never seen those before. And so seeing them soar around was just so fun. And because they're not really like sitting in the water, and then they kind of scoop out the fish as they're swimming along, I guess. But they're kind of too like the emblem of Klamath Falls. You ever go to Klamath Falls, Oregon, you'll see pelicans on the sewage covers and the signs welcoming you to Klamath Falls and stuff. So they're just a very iconic bird of the area, and they pass through this area. It's primarily a breeding grounds for them, but you do see them other times of the year too as they're passing through. And of course, all over the place, you got California quail. See them in really, really nice big groups. I love their little hook at the front. And a variety of other birds that you see, throughout Bay Area, California, but also throughout many parts of the country. We have red-winged blackbirds, meadowlarks, we have the dark-eyed juncos, We have the flycatchers. We have so many birds that, yeah, you just see all over using that Pacific Flyway. And it's just kind of nice to have those connections between certain areas that birds provide us. But they don't leave around some really helpful tracks in Scout, unfortunately. So you just have to learn how to be a really, really good birder, like I am not, to get all the crazy birds down. But if you are a good birder and you want to come up to the area, again, like January to March with bald eagles, or really any time of year to do some excellent birding, you can definitely do that. I do have to have a sad note at the end, though, as I say thank you. And then again, I don't work at Lava Beds anymore, now at Jewel Cave in South Dakota. But Lava Beds is currently closed, the majority of it at least. Had a really significant wildfire last year that burned over 70% of the park. And unfortunately, there was a wildfire burning outside of the park this year. The one last year started inside the park, called the Antelope Fire. And it was nearly contained. I was like, felt like I was leaving the park in good hands. I'm like, bye, everybody. When I left on August 27th, I think was my last day, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, that fire, just like within the last week, it jumped over the containment line and went right to Lava Beds, to the 30% that did not burn last year. So that's been a bit of a bummer to learn about and look at their social media about, which again, we do have a Facebook and an Instagram and YouTube at Lava Beds. That's a lot of fun to follow. But the park itself, I would say, just stay tuned on what's going on with poor little Lava Beds. But it's, you know, fire is a natural part of the landscape and everything, but it's just, yeah, it's going to probably be some portions of it closed for a time as they're trying to assess the damage after that's done. And so you can, any questions you have, email to that information account that we have there. I am always happy to talk about Lava Beds, even though I'm at Jewel Cave and any other unit of the National Park Service that I'm fortunate enough to work at. So I thank you all so much for joining my little talk today about tracks and scat, some birds tied in. And I also have to thank all the people for that provide the pictures, Nathan Charlton, Randy Paler, and Mark Blackburn. So thank you all so much. And what questions do you all have?
All right, well, thank you so much, Aimee. We did have a couple questions in chat come through. I am going to turn off the recording right now.